another episode of Channel 914. I'm your host, Rail Allen, and I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching, subscribing. We are officially over on 100 subscribers now, so I hit one button too many, but I was that excited. It's a big deal, kind of, sort of. But yeah, man, over 100 subscribers officially. Very, very thankful for that. And so continue to fuck with me, man, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I kind of feel important. One might even say I feel essential. You like how I did that?
I like that. That was a good play. That was a nice way to bridge it.
Yeah, you know, that's segues are my specialty.
I see that.
I'm good at that.
Yeah. That.
So now, as you can see, I have two more guests here with me today. Very, 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 very important people. One of which I have known for a long time. One of which I've known virtually for a short time. Please welcome Chanel Hampton and Melody Wilson.
Hi, everybody.
And we're going to do it one more time.
Virtual class.
You say virtual claps? Yes. That's post-COVID.
Right. Can't actually touch and shit.
Right. Just to yourself.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's so fucking weird. So they are, well, you guys are, co-owners of Essential Counseling Group. Mm-hmm. And you guys have several branches. You're not just in Chicago. You guys are nationwide.
That's the goal. That's the goal, though. He spoke it up.
But you're not just in Illinois, though, right?
No,
right.
No. So we have an office in Texas. That's actually our physical office. Right. It's in Texas, but we also serve clients in New Jersey and Indiana.
Yep. So we're pretty broken up, but we serve kind of just those three and growing.
Yes.
Internationally, too. I'm going to hold you to that.
Oh, okay.
Receive it.
Internationally. Worldwide.
Worldwide.
As they say, speaking into existence.
Yeah, you just did, and I'm holding it.
It's good shit. So, we're going to go right into it. So, just want to ask the first question. Why should somebody seek therapy?
The question should be, why shouldn't they? Right? I think that we haven't done a good job, and we're improving on kind of talking about what qualifies for therapy, right? We always think it's crisis situations. We always think like I have to be dire, somebody had to die.
Right. Yeah.
Are you not living post-COVID? In COVID? Like, is it post or are we in? I'm confused.
I mean, yeah, I think everybody's confused. I think I've been confused pretty much the whole time.
I am. Yeah, and then you threw on monkeypox.
Right, there's a whole other, right, and
then we talking about pandemic, and what that also meant was loss of jobs, kind of families, right? We've been having issues before COVID too.
And if you want to talk about before COVID, if you have a family that you are trying to get along with, blend with, right? Have you had siblings that you have some issues and just these blind spots, parts of your life that you're trying to improve? There are a lot of different reasons to seek therapy.
Yeah, so to answer your question, it's because you live, and because life is real all the time, and everything else.
Life is mad real.
Life is real.
So I know I read in your bio that you believe that everybody could benefit from therapy.
Absolutely. Our bodies don't separate good stress from bad stress. That's right. They don't. Your body reacts just the same. Think about when people get married. It's beautiful, but they're like, oh my God, my wedding's coming up. What am I going to do? Yeah. Having a baby. It's beautiful, but they like, is everything going to go right? Well, so good and bad stress. And in between, everybody needs support sometimes.
Yeah.
So is there ever an instance that you've seen or you might know of where people may not necessarily benefit from therapy?
I think the answer to that would be maybe in a different form or measure, right? Okay. Some people need it weekly. Some people need it, every 2 weeks. But I think sometimes we should start thinking about it as when you get your oil change, right? You get your oil change or you go to the doctor annually, check in, right? Nothing might not be going on, but you just like, all right, check this, make sure, okay, am I on the right path with my development or my kids or my spouse or, it's just a check-in.
No, that's real. Yeah, that's a good metaphor. I know it's funny because so I've been seeing my therapist for some years now, and I initially started off weekly, and that did not work for me. I ended up, it was too much.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I needed time to kind of like decompress.
Right.
So I found myself like missing it, and we kind of like, she had like one of those come to Jesus moments with me. Like, you're not finna keep canceling.
Right.
So we gonna try this bi-weekly.
Yes.
And then once we did that, that's when it kind of like everything shifted, and I was able to like really continue and start to benefit from it. But like, every week it was just too much.
And I like to tell my clients, it's however you feel supported, right? And I tell them when I'm like, how often do you want to meet? They looking at me, and I'm like, it's okay. If you start off week and then next week you like, I'm good for a month, you good for a month, right? There's no kind of cadence that we have to stick by.
That's right. And I would say that I have experienced people who were not necessarily ready for therapy.
Okay.
Because people come to therapy sometimes they come to therapy with an idea of what they want to address. And sometimes addressing certain issues may trigger other things, right? And some people aren't ready to grapple with certain demons, right, that they may be dealing with.
Yeah, nah, that's real. That's real. Because it's kind of one of those things which you don't know, like you just said, what's going to come up. You may think that you're going to talk about one thing,
Right.
and then you may lead into something completely different.
Yeah.
So,
And again, life is real. So you might be going along and then something knock you off your square.
Absolutely.
And now you're like, oh, I need to
happens
see
all the
you
time.
this week, next week. And I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
no, definitely, because life happens.
Life is
All
gonna,
the time, especially
life is going to life.
There's one thing life going to do.
Yes.
Sorry. So, there was a time in the Black community, right, where like almost nobody saw therapists, right? It was like super taboo, like nobody, like it was just like, if you said you were going to therapy, people automatically assume like, oh, are you crazy? Are you schizophrenic? Are you hearing voices?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But now we've entered this era where there's, and I think part of the pandemic had a little bit more to do with this.
Absolutely.
And we're in the self-care era now.
Yes, we
Where
are.
like, so,
Yes,
like, more of an emphasis has been placed on mental health. So, like, why do you feel like it was so taboo before? And what do you think led to it being more acceptable now?
I would say, obviously, there are several reasons, especially in the Black community. So when you think about things like healthcare in general, right? The healthcare field in general hasn't necessarily served marginalized communities. So you think about you think about people being misdiagnosed, right? People being over-diagnosed or over-medicated. People don't want their freedom taken away from them, right? Or their autonomy taken away from them. And historically, if you think about mental health, you think about insane asylums or, being hospitalized. No one wants to see that. And which goes back to people feeling like I have to be crazy, right? And it wasn't just having a conversation with someone that's objective to help you with your issues. People weren't educated.
Yeah, and to add to that, the way it was brought up was also problematic. If your kids were getting taken from DCFS, they like, go to therapy, right? It was kind of like, because you did this, you need to do this, right? And to Chanel's point, economically, right, we weren't in these spaces because before, a lot of times, think about the insurance we have. Public aid, you can't, it's a lot of difficulty finding a therapist that takes it. And then the quality, right? Because they're like, well, you schedule, So it's so many barriers, and ourselves, like we weren't educated about it. We were told, don't talk, don't tell nobody our business.
That's right.
Black she fine, but she talking to herself, she good. Right? So the space wasn't there, and I feel like the pandemic really brought it to the forefront because a lot of the barriers that we were having were opened up.
They were exacerbated.
Yeah. And then two, everybody kind of started catching on to the buzzwords of therapy.
Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah. And I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Just to go into that a little bit deeper, representation.
Yes.
Me being a therapist who has a therapist, and I've had therapists over the years, several different therapists, and my first few therapists were absolutely not Black people, right? And having these conversations and having to explain different parts of myself, right? People, if you sit across from someone who doesn't look like you assume they don't understand you, right?
Facts.
And, you know, when you are talking about these vulnerable parts of your life, you want to feel protected. You want to feel safe. Right. And historically, you know, different races of people have not made us feel safe. So, you know.
That's putting it mildly.
Historically and ongoing, right? And ongoing,
yes.
right?
So, and it's funny that you say that because there was my first experience going to therapy. It was some years ago. Like I kind of like through my job. And it was just one like my first ever. I didn't know what to do. I just kind of like, okay, well, mental health services,
EAP.
and I did right. And I just felt like, you know, it would be good for me. There were some things I felt like I was stuck in some cycles, and I felt like it would be beneficial for me to, like, you know, be able to talk to somebody. Maybe, you know, it would help me out. If I could, somebody to help me evaluate some things. And I went, and they found this woman. It was just like she was white. And she was very cold. She didn't make a lot of eye contact with me. And she was just kind of like, she was asking questions, and the follow-up question she was asking, based on my answers, like, I know, like, you're not listening to me for real.
It's not, you're not following my story.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, you really just, like, you doing
She's
this out
not
of...
connecting.
No.
You're in a box.
Yeah, so that really kind of like soured my whole experience, and I didn't seek out therapy again for years after that.
And to that point, right? It's a lot of people have those experiences and they don't come back.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but therapy. Well, I had this one therapist, and I tell them it's like a shoe, right? Every shoe don't fit.
That's right.
You have to keep trying on a new shoe. Hopefully, not a lot of new shoes, but a couple sometimes.
Right.
But think about your goal, right? You want to be better. And you have to keep going to find that person.
Yeah. And just going off that, sometimes you have to shop around to find a good fit. You have to find a therapist that, first of all, hears you, right?
Yeah, right.
And sees you. And then thinking about the different modalities, right? Finding a modality that actually works for you, because everyone isn't solution focused. Sometimes you have to process some other things before you could get to the solutions, right? Sometimes cognitive behavioral therapy is not, you know, appropriate for you. So shopping around. And also going back to Black people, right? There were times where church was therapy for us, right?
Facts.
So, don't even start down that path. You can have Jesus in therapy, by the way. I just want to say that out loud.
You know what?
I just want
to
say
about
it.
a segue.
I just want to say it.
Because I that was a question that I was going to have for later. But since you brought that up, because that is something that always seems like, it's like, so you either going to talk to God, you're going to talk to a therapist,
or
you can't do both. But it's just like, why can't you? Why can't you? Right? Why can't you go to church and have a therapist?
And that's the thing. You don't even, so as a therapist, when people are very spiritual or wherever they are, that is in addition to me, and I'm very clear about that.
Right. You
can pray in your session if you need that. You can talk about your spirituality. I'm not intimidated. I'm like, okay, let's take something off of that, right? Yeah. Let's hold this to say, okay, what about this can we take from that?
Absolutely.
So you don't have to pick. And I think we've done a bad job over the years in terms of barriers, like their first question, of making people feel like if you go to a therapist or if you take certain medications, you don't believe in God.
That's right.
Like, God made the medications. He made me. He made Chanel. He made Essential Counseling Group. No plug.
Yeah. So and it is kind of crazy, because I've seen and I've talked to people that they do necessarily feel like if you were to go seek help outside of the church, then you would, in a sense, be going against God.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that kind of discourages some people that are really religious from seeking help elsewhere, because it's just like, because it almost translates into a lack of faith.
Yeah. And I would say, piggybacking off of this again, with therapy, it's about mind, body, and soul, right? So you have to have you don't have to be a religious person, right? But spirituality is part of who all of us are, regardless if you have a certain practice that you follow. Tapping into what your spirit is telling you and being in tune with that part of yourself is important. So I love when I have religious clients, right? Because this is a tool. You came with the tool, right? And like Melody was saying, this is something we could absolutely use for your betterment. But we want to make sure, and this is something that absolutely needs to be communicated, because pastors and church leaders, with their formal training, they're now being trained to counsel people, right? Like when you hear about marriage counselors, typically it's a religious leader, right? Right, yeah. And I'm all for, I think that serves its purpose as well. But like Melody said, you can have both.
You can have both. You can go to your pastor for marriage counseling. You can come to me too.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's kind of like you could have a personal trainer to work this body, right? And get yourself in shape. And you could have somebody who is helping you get yourself together spiritually, and you could have somebody helping you get yourself together mentally. And you kind of need that team.
Like all hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
Yeah, the more the merrier.
Right.
Yeah. Now, so also, like, speaking of barriers, I know we touched on this a little bit. So, like, can you elaborate more on how you feel like economically, like or economics has been a barrier to how Black people or how Black people have had access to therapy?
It's an ongoing joke, and I'm in a lot of social groups on social media, and people are always saying, my insurance, right? That's a big barrier. That's a whole nother show. But a lot of times, right, the insurance doesn't have a lot of Black therapists, or maybe they're full, or, you know, I refer people to like therapy for Black girls all the time, different places to kind of find us. So historically, I feel like a lot of the barrier comes from the type of insurance we typically have, right? We typically tend to have the public aids, or if we have another insurance carrier, it's not a lot of us on there. And, you know, so economically, we're not able to pay for it out of pocket typically. The costs can be a little high, and the insurances sometimes are not always taken.
I'll take that even deeper. Going to the psychology piece of it, thinking about the hierarchy of needs.
Right.
If you are focused on feeding your kids, or finding a job, or just finding different resources so you can live, you aren't focused on your mental health. You should be. Right. But people typically, you know, we focus on those basic needs first, right? And historically, you know, if you are from an impoverished community and you don't know about these resources, right? Or know how they could be beneficial to you, you don't know that you need that sort of help. Yeah. So.
And then money wise, right? Economically, like if I'm on a limited income, and my copay is $50 or the session is $150, I want to do it, but can I? Because at the end of the day, I still got to feed my kids, feed my, you know, car, the gas that's astronomically high,
crazy,
all of that. So it's crazy. It's these decisions we have to make just to live sometimes.
And even thinking about now, you have virtual therapists, right? Right. Which most of Essential Counseling, another plug, you know, most of...
Plug away.
I mean, I'm just saying, she was just talking about Essential Counseling Group.
Essential Counseling Group.
But for the most part, we do virtual therapy. We do have a physical office, and most of us have done therapy in person, but, you know, adding to the lack of resources. If you can't get to a grocery store, why, you know, would you be spending money to go to a therapist, right? So I'm happy that we have leadership in the Chicagoland area, at least, that is, you know, really pushing for mental health and making the resources more available.
So is there anything that you guys do in particular to try to make it more accessible?
Yes, so we do offer sliding scales. You know, every individual therapist that's listed on the website has their own sliding scale. In addition, there are other websites like Open Path that also have therapists. We're on there too, but a lot of the therapists are offering therapy at a smaller, lower rate than typically.
Yeah, and I also, most of us work with different organizations.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could put those organizations' names out.
Different organizations.
But I will plug one, Affinity, which is for LGBTQAI community, where they offer scholarships, so to speak, for people of certain communities, where they cover the cost of therapy. There's also coffee, hip hop, and mental health.
I've seen that. Yeah,
we work with them too.
So we and even you said it before. Mental health for Black girls. What is it called?
Yeah, therapy for Black girls.
You.
So also we like to. So in addition to that, we do partnerships. We always open the partnerships that can make it more accessible for people of color and others, of course. But it's the greatest need for our communities.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, well, it's important, especially with you guys being of color yourselves.
Correct.
And then just so you guys will know more, because it's different from other groups will try to come in and do what's best for us without actually knowing and without actually having lived the experience. So you know firsthand.
And these are avenues that we take. I mean, I could say personally, this is how I find my therapist, how I tell other people to find therapists, or the platforms that I'm on, because I don't want to have to pay a lot of money either.
Yeah, I do that too. I refer people to the same platform. And that's also why we started the business. We recognized the need. And we even started with offering deals. So we just wanted to let people know we out here. And we here. So
did y'all have a Groupon or something?
It wasn't it was something similar. It was a promotion. And something I would say about Essential Counseling is we charge much less. We have a sliding scale, but we also charge much less than other therapists or insurance companies, so that we can make it affordable for the population we're trying to reach.
And that was the mission of when we started. We just wanted everyone to have accessibility because the need is so great.
That's very admirable.
We're social workers.
We're not free though.
No.
I feel like sometimes people be like, "Oh, it's not free, but we workable."
I mean, y'all gotta get paid. This is your job.
This is literally our job.
But sometimes that could be taken a little differently. Like you said, let's clear it up.
Yeah, you want to help everybody, right?
You want to help. I need help.
You got to help yourself,
Exactly.
You can't help anybody else unless you help yourself first.
Because I got to eat, and I like to eat.
Right. How you going to listen to somebody's problems if you're hungry?
This is the truth.
Hierarchy of needs.
Hierarchy of needs. And even speaking about that, going back to Essential Counseling, we also offer case management. We offer case management for people who are looking for resources. We charge for that service, but it would be much cheaper. If you consider the time people have to take looking for resources. We're all social workers for other entities. So, we have our hands on the other resources that are available to people, and we want to make it easier for people to find those resources, right?
Nice. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. That's really great. So, pivoting just slightly. So we talked about it is more in the know now that people are seeking the therapy, seeking therapy, right? So now that it's more popular, do you ever come across people that are just going to therapy and just saying they're going to therapy and they don't really want to work on themselves? They just want to be able to say that they're in therapy.
Semi, right? I think that was something that was there. Just people are people.
Right.
Some people just well, she said I need a therapist, so I just came to saw you. And I'm like, so what do you feel like you need? So I can't think of a time where somebody was just doing it per se.
I can.
Please share.
No slight to these people, but not necessarily people coming to Essential Counseling, right? People seeking out therapy. But I have worked for different companies that kind of required patients, right? Because I'm a medical social worker, and I've seen in these are people who actually need it, right? They're non-compliant, or they have different ailments where, you know, these ailments exist because of their mental health, right? And those people will go just so they can get certain resources.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you definitely see an abuse of certain systems. So, you know, it's disheartening to know and to even have to say that, but absolutely.
Yeah, it depends on it, yeah. And those are more of required services.
Yeah.
So if they're more required or mandated, I feel like that becomes more of an issue. Because with our services, you're coming to us. So essentially, you're kind of wanting to get help or feeling like you may be needed.
Yeah. I saw it because, you know, I'm very much an advocate for therapy. I feel like it's done wonders for me. But I feel like in certain ways it's become a little trendy.
It is trendy.
And I would hate to see it become something where they're just people were doing it just because they feel like, you know, it's something that people are doing. You know, and not because it really is a powerful tool that can help you. And I just would, and I feel like I've had conversations with people that have led me to believe that
you're not doing the work.
You know
I
what I'm
think
saying?
part of it is sometimes people may come and not know what to talk about. Right? But a good therapist will kind of get you to talk about it. Right. Some people be like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. And then by the end, they're like, and then and I'm like, look at you all spilling over. And I thought you didn't have nothing to say to me. Those are the best ones.
And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about some people come to therapy not ready. I mean, a couple of things we said earlier. It's therapy for everybody.
Right.
I think that therapy could be beneficial to everybody, right? And there are those people who come because of, you know, it's cliche. I think I need to work on myself, right? It's cute. Right. But I think that once you get into that space and you have, you know, certain types of therapists that can pull things from you, people can benefit from it. But there are people who come.
And I guess, you know, and so the other side of that coin is like, maybe it doesn't matter how they get there. It's just the fact that they do.
Absolutely.
Like
I feel
church
like,
says.
like some people just come with goals that are like so superficial. I just want to be better. It's like, okay, what does better look like? They're like, it's like, come on, let's break that down. And so they do turn into these realistic, wow, I didn't even think I needed that type of things. It's kind of it's a process, you know, it's a journey, not a just go do. Right. So.
Yeah, because so do you find people like, because I always tell people that it's a very, very long process. You know, and like people will go to like 3 or 4 therapy sessions. They've already feel like they've like made this miraculous breakthrough. You know, and that's not to say that they haven't. Right. And
it depends on what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
But it kind of I just like to tell people that don't go there and expecting like you do it for 30 days and everything's just going to be okay.
Not at all.
You know what I'm saying?
And I think I'm very realistic when people come to me. I'm like, it's a journey. Right. And it's various parts of this journey that I might be there for, but this is a whole journey of learning or getting this under control.
And again, going back to something we said, you never know what you will uncover going to therapy. So you can't put a timestamp, you know, and some of the things are quantifiable. There's certain quick therapies that we can do and that I actually do all the time. Everyone who comes to therapy doesn't need to be in therapy for years, right? Some people have certain small issues they're trying to address, but things like grief, right? I mean, we're human. We don't, you know, grief is one of those things we always talk about where you don't know how it's going to hit you. You don't know when it's going to hit you, but you know it's going to hit you. Especially if it's certain people, right? So,
and also just to expand grief isn't always just about a death. Right? It's about loss. Grief is loss. People have lost their jobs. People have lost loved ones. People have lost everything and a lot of things during the span of life in general. So those things come up and they affect us sometimes that we don't even realize.
No, that's real. Yeah, because there were definitely times where, like, you know, because I've been seeing the same therapist. But I was going for a while, and then I kind of like
tapered off.
Yeah, because I mean, I worked through what I needed to work through, And then, life lifed.
Yeah.
Life.
You know what I'm saying?
And
then,
call for different things.
Yeah. So now, I'm working through something else.
Yeah.
And
as a therapist, we enjoy that. I love when my clients, because just as much as, you think about us, we think about you too. Like, whatever happened to? Yeah. And then I get an email. I'm like, okay, yes, let's get back in session, right? So it's okay to go back to your therapist. We're not like, what she want? Yeah. We're like, oh my gosh, like, let's catch up. Where are you with life? And
it's funny because because that first time, she was basically like, I think you're okay. Yeah. And I was just like, well, how does this work? Do I get a certificate or something? You know what I'm saying? Is there a ceremony?
I feel
you know what? It's weird for us too. It's kind of like this breakup that happens, right? It's not like a breakup, but it is like, okay, so be great in your life, keep your skills, right. Be good. You remember what I taught you, like. Yeah. It's on both ends.
But it's one of those relationships, especially if you have a good therapist, and hopefully they continue to practice, right?
Right.
You can always get back with your therapist. Come back. It's not a definitive breakup.
Yeah. So reach back out to your therapist if you haven't seen them in a while. It's okay. Because I feel like when sometimes people reach out to me, they're like, I'm so sorry, I haven't seen you in months. And I'm like, welcome back with open arms, right? Because it's a relationship. It's not just a service per se. It develops into a relationship.
If only all relationships would just welcome you back.
I know, right? Not all of them, though. Some of them you don't need to be welcome.
This is true. Some of those relationships are why we're in therapy.
Right, healthier ones, they should welcome you back. Not the unhealthy. Leave them there.
Yeah, not the toxic ones.
No, definitely not that.
Well, toxic relationships can turn to healthy with good insight and good therapy, right? If you work through those issues, right?
Much of the time.
and hear me with couples therapy. I have a lot of clients that come to me in very toxic situations, right? Wanting to be better, right? I absolutely am a therapist that believes that you can work through those issues. But we all have our baggage and we have our stuff. But if you really want something to work with the proper tools, you can make it work.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. No, I 100% believe that. Yeah, for sure. And it's good. And I think, I'm glad you said that, because I think more people need to hear that, because we definitely live in a time where, the whole cutoff game and everything is just like not working through things just really isn't popular, so to speak.
Yeah, because it's easier that way.
Yeah.
If I cut you off, if I make you mad, I don't have to deal with it.
I mean, is it really easy? Because you're still left with those emotions.
I was just about to say.
But no, that's our mindset. But then you're like, oh my God. And it's like, it wasn't easy. Right.
And walking around hurting other people
that's because
you're hurting. And,
right.
Hurt people. That's a real thing.
Because I can't cut people off I care about. That's not something that I've been able to do. I've tried. It's just like, if I, you know what I'm saying? Like, it gets to a point where I can walk away,
right?
You know what I mean, and you may not hear from me, but it's just I'm never that person where I'm just like, I'm finna block you. You never gonna hear from me again. Or even if you ever call me, I'm not gonna answer. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like it takes more energy to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But
and that's
go ahead. I was gonna say the other piece of that is, even if you're not that person, how can we make it healthier? Right. When that person reaches out, how can you work through that in therapy?
Oh yeah, we definitely do.
Yeah. It's not about cutting off, but when they text me, I need to have the tools to be like, keep this boundary.
Yeah, and that's something that I did have to work on, because I know myself, and I know that I'm not that person. It's just like, okay, but when it does happen, handling the situation.
How do you handle it?
Yeah. So
because we can't control other people. Therapy 101. You only control yourself.
Yep. And you don't need to control other people. You only need to control yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, what made you want to become a therapist? This is for both of you, not just.
Well, you want to start?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I've known that I wanted to be a therapist my entire life. And I know this is cliche. Well, some people don't really.
So when you say entire life,
since I've been able to, since I've known what a psychologist was, right? I was like, this is the job for me, right? Because I've always been a connector, and I connect with people on a really intimate level, and I'm always trying to help people figure out, how can we make this better, right? That's just who I am,
facts.
At the core, and coming from the background, the upbringing that I had, I saw a lot of mental health issues before I even articulate or really knew what that was.
Right.
And it's, you know, it was something that I wanted to help my family and my friends address. And the funny thing is, going back to essential counseling, so there was a period of time in my career. So my first career was in higher education, and I was so afraid to leave because I was like, I don't want to take a pay cut. Social workers don't get paid anything. And I was afraid to be a therapist because I'm like, that's a huge obligation, right? Once I understood what it actually meant.
Right.
And yeah, then, you know, I met these 3 wonderful women, right? Essential counseling. And they pushed me, right? Because, and I knew that I could be a good therapist. I had practiced, especially with my internships in graduate school, and some time after that. But this is something that I always knew I wanted to do. And I know that I'm one of those few people that are blessed to do something they've always wanted to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're welcome for the show.
Thank you.
But I guess with me, I grew up on the South Side in Inglewood. I've always wanted to figure out how to help people just the same. So I've always been a social worker at heart. And when I learned about therapists, I was like, I really want to do that because they're able to really work with people and make them better. I like the process. I love how somebody comes to me. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Then when they walk away from me, they're like, okay, I'm doing this, right? I love the change. It's kind of like a butterfly, right? You go in this cocoon, which is where we are when we're wrestling with all these issues. And at the end, they become this whole different person. And I love, for me, that process is amazing. And to think that I was a small part of that, because you do the work. But I'm a small part. I think of it like I'm a GPS. I tell my client, this your car. Don't think I'm taking the wheel, right? But I'm trying to teach you how to go a different path because you're used to this path, right? In this path, you got all kind of rocks and dirt. Your tires keep busting. So let's go left and let's dig this path or figure this out. And when you go right again, I'm just going to say rerouting, right? Let's go back this way. So I just genuinely love the process.
Yeah.
Your arsenal of metaphors is pretty impressive.
And you know, those metaphors and those analogies, they kick in when you are doing therapy.
I think so. I did not always have these, but the longer I've been doing therapy, they come so natural.
And I'm laughing because this is how I talk.
This is how we talk.
If any of my clients see this, they're going to be like, they're like the same person because this is how I speak.
Because you know what? It's explaining it in layman's terms, right? And we know this, but sometimes visual people or people that need to know what it looks like, it's helpful to be like, there we go, right? It's that aha moment that's like, no, this is this. And they're like, never thought about it. So they develop naturally and genuinely over the years, but they are there.
You got it honestly.
I know. My clients be doing that too. They be like, your metaphor. I'm like, sorry, I'm a therapist.
So is there anything that you don't like about being a therapist?
Sometimes I don't like insurances. Sometimes it's kind of hard to navigate that arena, right? And sometimes I have to accept where people are and that they don't want to change, right? Sometimes I see so much potential. And I'm like, I'm cheering you on. I'm like, we can do more. And then you just like, no, I'm not doing no more. And I have to be okay with that and support you in that and say, I understand that. And if this is genuinely where you want to be and you feel like this is enough, it's okay. But you can always pick back up. So I think that part sometimes gets hard for me.
You gotta leave people where they are.
You do. But you know, it's self-determination. I tell people all the time, this is your car. I'm on the radio, but this is your car. So
being a natural fixer, wanting people to do things. I definitely agree with that. I would say for me, it's a little more personal. You know, life be lifing. Right. So, you know, having to still function and take in a lot of information and hardship, right? When you are going through your own hardship and pain, and and I think I do a good job at balancing that, right? But being human, sometimes it gets a little heavy, and also sometimes also that human element, seeing your client hurt and trying to introduce different tools. And again, going back to, what you were saying, knowing they have the potential, but knowing they aren't ready, and not knowing when they'll be ready, and having to accept the fact that they are going to leave your office or leave this session and go do something that's probably going to dig them in a deeper hole, right? That gets heavy, especially, when there are certain things like abusive relationships, right? And there's so many rules to therapy that we protect our clients. Safety is always first. But there's certain things that we can't even disclose, right? Like if a person comes to us and they say they've been abused and they don't want to disclose that to the authorities, we can't say anything, right? Unless they're a child, elder, or
that's like mandatory reporting, right?
So we're definitely mandatory
reporters.
But I like what you said kind of about your own life. And that is true. Like, there's a meme that the top picture is like the person in therapy, and then the bottom is like this fire. So it's like your therapist is going, well, it's fire. And we're like, so tell me how that makes you feel. And all behind it's crazy. Like,
so how do you manage that? Like, how do you, as a therapist, listening and dealing with other people's problems as your job, like how do you absorb all of that and still like manage to deal with your own problems? And do you ever find that it like may leak over into your personal life some?
It always has the potential to leak because we're humans.
Right.
Right. I have children and sometimes they banging at the door. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Get off the door. Right. Right. The life shows up. However, I think for me, I have to be realistic with where I am, right? So if I'm not in a good headspace, I might have to reschedule. If I am feeling overwhelmed, I might have to take off a day of therapy or make my schedule lighter. In self-care, oh my gosh, I have to turn it off. So having these boundaries around my work-life balance is very important for me. So I'll take a vacation. Like everybody's like, you're always on vacation. I'm like, you don't know the type of work I do. I need these weeks, right? Right. I just really tune into how am I feeling, and if I'm feeling too much, because I can't show up for you if I'm not there for me. That doesn't work. I can't be like, blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh my God, what is she talking about? Right, because
you're not even listening. You worried about your own.
Because I'm worrying about all of this. And I had to tell people, and I don't think they try, but I'm like, I'm human too. Right. Like I have to take space for me, and they're like, oh, you're not working the weekend? I want to, but it probably wouldn't help you to talk to me on Saturday, this Saturday. Right. Like I need that. So just being realistic about my own needs and allowing myself space to turn it off. And when I go on vacation, I tell everybody, I'm nobody's nothing. Okay. I'm nobody's mother. I'm nobody's therapist. You catch me in the airport, I'm like, right, catch me on your session, because it has to have these spaces. Boundaries.
Heavy on the self-care, heavy on the therapy for the therapist, heavy on the boundaries, right? You like you said, you have to know yourself, you have to know where you are, and you have to know when to reschedule, right? And I will also say that doing therapy is healing to me as well. So I can be in a space where I'm grieving a loved one, right? But help somebody else heal, right? And even hearing them talk about their loved one or whatever loss it may be, because grief is a lot of different things. It's just loss, but hearing those things can help give me insight, or just something can trigger something in me to help me heal. And I mean, you still have to really practice boundaries with that, because you can't go into a therapy
like,
session
too,
and they're like, my cousin,
right.
you know, you can't do
but
that.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I tell people, I learn from you as much as you learn from me.
Absolutely.
There are certain things. I mean, my clients teach me all the time about different stuff about religion or thoughts, and I'm like, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's a relationship.
Yeah.
It's not just you paying me or feeling like you paying me to talk. I'm actually learning and taking in you too.
Yeah. No, it's funny that you said that, like, you know, listening to other people's can help you kind of, because that's kind of what happened with me when my brother passed. I ended up having, I don't know if you remember.
I do.
Yeah. I kind of formed this little impromptu support group. And just because I never experienced loss like that before. So it was kind of wild to me, because I felt like I felt like a jerk, because I didn't feel like I was supportive enough of people that I've known beforehand that had experienced that, but I didn't know.
You don't know until you know.
Yeah, yeah. But once I knew, it was just okay, nah. Like, and I just
action mode.
Yeah, and I know people don't necessarily like deal with this all the time, but they don't necessarily have spaces. At least we don't, where we can talk about it. And it ended up being like pretty good for a while. And it was very helpful to me.
It was helpful to me as well.
And group therapy, right? That's essentially what group therapy is. Some people think, why would I go and hear somebody talking? Like, you get something out of it. Yeah. And we have a good circle amongst ourselves. If something goes left, we hopping on the phone. Like, anybody ready? Okay. Let me process this session.
Consultations.
So,
we do consultations.
As needed, right on the fly. We'll text. Consult real quick. Everybody jump on. We're all on board. So we're getting support too. We support each other externally, internally, things that we do. So
and I know this isn't a question, but I feel the need to say that, and I anyone who knows me and hears me talk about essential counseling, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I've did several different things, you know, over my life, throughout my life. But this therapy piece, I would never want to do this on my own. And I'm so thankful to be part of a group practice. And this is also coming from working for different companies, working for different therapists. There's something different. First of all, 3 Black women, right?
And we know each other. I think for us, I've known Chanel since we were about 16. And then the other 2 ladies, I formed a relationship, and we were at a clinic, and I brought Chanel on. So it just formed naturally. So it doesn't even feel like necessarily a business all the time. I trust them. So it takes a different tone.
Excuse me.
Yeah, this is definitely a sisterhood.
So that's perfect segue. So how exactly did you guys start Essential Counseling? Like, I know, so we've touched on it a little bit, but I'm sure there's some sort of story.
Yes. Yeah. So myself and one of my colleagues, we mentioned it before randomly. I went to a class or training at University of Chicago. And the topic was therapy for Black women. And if you know that school, it's not historically a Black. No. It wasn't a lot of us, right? We both graduated. Right. So I was very curious as to what this would look like and what they were going to teach. So I went. What I heard was a lot of my other people, non-people of color colleagues saying, I don't even know, or teach us how to relate to Black women, right? It was more teaching them how to feel like they can support us in this space. What I also saw was it wasn't a lot of us in the class. I think it was myself and somebody else. So for me, and I kept hearing the other colleagues talk about, every time I'm meeting with a person of color, they're like, it was hard to find a Black therapist. It was hard to find a Black therapist. I didn't realize that because I'm in this field. So I see us. Right. And so when I kept hearing it from them as well as us, that's kind of, and then my other colleague, me and her talked about it, and we were like, we got to do something about this. Because typically people want to go to therapy, they want to feel represented, and then our idea of therapy, that you think of somebody older, so many ideas about what a therapist looks like. And then you see me and Chanel, they're like, you a therapist? I'm like, yeah, I am. So that's kind of where it started, from this class, and really understanding that people were feeling like this lack of representation.
And going off that as well, all of us were working with different companies as therapists. In the pandemic, it really pushed things for us because we were still working for those different entities. And, you know, these 70-30 splits where they're getting most of the money and we're doing all of the work, right? Going in people's homes, you know,
all of the work.
Having crazy, excuse me for the word, having crazy situations where our safety was put, you know, in jeopardy. We were jeopardizing ourselves
for a 30 split.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't getting paid much, right? And while having your own business is not inexpensive, right? But it's worth what we pay. You know, it's worth the investment, and not just for the financial gain, right? I mean, but this is our job, so that helps as well. But the investment in our community, I always knew, and I had been having conversations with multiple groups of friends, because I have a lot of different groups of friends that are therapists, right? And I always knew that I wanted to be part of a company that served not just Black people, but people who look like me in a lot of different ways.
And also, how powerful is it to come across a therapy agency where it's ran by 4 Black women, right? So just the power behind that is amazing. So that's essentially
no loans,
where we
no PPP
no
loans,
PPP,
no shade,
we did
no
it by
shade,
ourselves, right?
No shade to the
but
people
that's a pride point.
I wish I could have got me.
But it just speaks to how dedicated we were to showing up for people that look like us. That we said we gonna figure this out amongst ourselves and make it work.
Because it is, because I definitely I definitely asked specifically for a Black therapist when I found my therapist that I have now, because I just feel like, especially after that my first experience, and also there is just an inherent trauma that goes with being Black in America. That somebody that is not Black, they're just not going to understand. So, and that's always going to show up in various ways.
Alter the culture, right? We have certain, words that we use, certain phrases.
Exactly. You're going to understand. And then it's just been times, like, especially, with all that stuff that's been happening over the last few years. I get on the session, me and my therapist both like, bro.
Right. And you're having very real conversations.
And would have a problem if my therapist didn't bring it up.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I feel like those have been the best sessions. And going back to your point about, does it help me having those moments to be like, what in the world? And having human. At this point, I'm your therapist, but we also going to talk about this color, the skin that we got, and how this is showing up for us.
Or even more recently, talking about Roe versus Wade, being a woman.
A woman.
Right? A woman who has family and friends. And I went to an all women's college, right? So I have so many friends that are impacted by things like that. And my clients, most of my clients, it's about half and half with male and female, but and things like that affect both of us.
And being up as a woman and understanding. So it's just this beautiful process, but it definitely, those conversations, and when all of that was happening in the pandemic, in addition to a pandemic, we had the racial stuff.
Heavy.
It was just a madhouse, right?
George Floyd happened.
The world was at a standstill. We literally were locked in and watching
the White House stuff
being
like
it was insane.
crazy.
Right, January 6th happened.
Oh my gosh. I was watching like, what is going? Is this real?
I will never forget.
It's becoming like 9/11. I will never forget the day.
Where were you?
Where were you?
Look, January 6th happened.
Because I was working, and so I found out everything through social media because I don't watch the news.
Okay.
So I found out once everybody else finds out, and they start talking about it. So I'm sitting here, and I've been working, and I have been scrolling. And then I'm just seeing people talking. And I'm like, man, what are people talking? So whenever something happens, just I do turn to CNN.
Right.
And I turn to CNN, and I'm just like, bro, it was unbelievable.
I think the three of us, me, her, and another colleague, we were on 3-way. I was laying in my bed watching it. I couldn't even work because it was just
I mean,
it was unbelievable.
The world was at standstill.
But when you talk about that black experience, right? Every black person I know had the same exact thought. Had that been us,
because I think
that we never would have made it inside. They would have gunned us down.
Because prior to that, I think they tried to have a rally of Black Lives Matter, and they blocked the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
In the same space.
They blocked the stairs.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have the people now are surprised that they going to jail.
Yeah. Because you had.
I love the videos.
Yeah, I try to be a little objective.
Low key.
But
God
we
bless
had
you.
a leader. We had a leader, right? Who fueled this fire.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. He sent a lot of people off. Well, and that's and not to get too far off topic.
Yeah.
But that is really kind of because of the internet and with this whole podcasting thing, right? It's not if you have a phone, if you have an internet connection, if you have a computer, if you have an email account, you can set up on YouTube or various platforms, and you can put your opinions and disseminate your message, right? But the thing is, people are still viewing this on the screen.
Yeah.
And people are more likely to believe things that they see
continuously.
Yeah,
depending on the avenue that's given in.
So it's not just Trump. There are many people out here that are spreading misinformation all over the internet. You talk about those QAnon people, the InfoWars. They said, what's the guy's name? Alex Jones. I don't know if you guys. He's a conspiracy theorist. I was just read that he was there. He's being sued now. He's most known for like basically saying that Sandy Hook was a hoax.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah,
recently.
the families have been suing him, and so a lot of his financials have been come out. This dude was making $800,000 an episode.
Wow.
Right, and based off of disseminating misinformation.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just Trump. This is kind of like a widespread thing, which is kind of another reason why I feel like it's important for people to have like some sort of journalistic integrity. So that's why I'm not just going to get out here on the internet and just start saying, all types of wild stuff.
Like real life getting sued though.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just, yes, you could say it, but at what cost? If somebody don't like it that much, they could take it to court.
Yeah. And some of the, but see, some people can and some people can't. There are way more people out here that are doing it without repercussions. And worst case scenario, eventually they may get their account shut down.
Right.
Yeah. But then they're developing other, because doesn't Trump have like his own, or was he developing some sort of other social media platform?
I know he still communicates via a social media platform, and it's not Twitter.
But again, that's why therapy is important, because all of these things, and people come to therapy, they like, I don't know why this is affecting me, because it is part of you. Even when we hear about these traumas or killings or shootings, no, it didn't happen to you, but we are human, and we know that could have been us.
Absolutely.
And it is so crazy when you talk about the black experience, because I remember specifically we're talking about January 6th. There was a woman when they were trying to like actually go into the Congress chambers.
Yeah.
And they were like beating down the door, and one of the officers shot, and the woman got killed. Yeah. But they wouldn't show her die. They wouldn't show her get shot. They blurred it out or they cut it off.
But they show black bodies being murdered
all the time. You saw the life leave George Floyd's eyes. And they played that over and over and over again.
Forget it. So I can only imagine.
Right. And you saw Mike Brown's lifeless body laying out in the street.
For hours.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like it's so black trauma is constantly on display. It's like we got another Emmett Till movie coming out.
And also living in Chicago, right? I've lost loved ones to gun violence.
Yeah.
Every time you're on Facebook, it's rest in peace. Like this is just a reality. So to go to your point, why should somebody come to therapy? Because you are in this life with all this craziness.
Yeah.
If you have a social media page, you should be in therapy.
Right.
Because you can't even control what you are consuming.
If you're living, period, right? Because there's so much going on, on every level, above us, below us and here. So it's like all this stuff that people just have to make some sense of. And that's why we're here. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys are here.
We're happy we're here as well.
We're happy we're here.
You're doing a bang up job. As I like to say, pillars of the community.
We're trying our best. We're doing our part. It's a lot of work, but we're trying to do our portion of the work.
Look, I would say all lives matter, but we know what that means. But all jobs. The village, the village matters.
Yeah,
and everybody has to do what they can.
Yeah, representation matters. Yeah. We're here, right? I constantly am in these spaces where people are like, I don't know where a Black therapist is, and I'm like, we're here. We're right here, sis. Therapy for Black girls is an amazing resource. We're on there. A lot of different platforms. And
they have a good podcast, too.
They do.
Which they always say, it does not replace your relationship with a licensed clinician. But, it's still a good resource if you want to know about the therapeutic experience, if you want to hear from other therapists. It's a good resource.
So if someone wants to reach out to Essential Counseling Group, how can they do that?
Let Chanel take this. Go ahead.
So there's several ways. Call us. So we have a website, and it's a little long, but it's essentialcounselinggroup.com. Or you can find us on, I think all four of us are on Path, Grow, Headway, Amwell,
Therapy for Black girls.
Yes.
Yeah. We're also on Instagram and Facebook.
I was going to say, do you have social media pages? Okay,
yeah. Under Essential Counseling Group.
Yes. And I'm sure you will post that.
Oh, yeah. No, there'll be links.
Yeah.
There'll be a link to the website for sure in the bio of this, in the comments of this episode or description or one of those things. Yeah. It'll be there.
It's going to be listed.
Yeah. You can see it. Essential Counseling Group.
But reach out. We are available for non-traditional hours. I typically work in the evenings when people who are coming, the people who work those 9 to 5s, weekends, Sunday, before or after church.
Yeah. Yeah, we're pretty open in terms of hours. I know I typically work evenings and weekends as well.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate you ladies for coming through and blessing my platform. Lots of good information. It's been a very interesting interview. I feel like I've learned some things, and I do appreciate, because we for sure need more representation in this field.
Absolutely.
And regardless if it's more less taboo now, more popular now, I think it is important. I believe, like you, that everybody could benefit from it in some way, shape, or form.
Can I say something about that?
No.
No, go ahead. Just a little tidbit to make it less taboo. Put your kids in therapy. Start that process. Educate them early. Give them access to things that you did not have access to.
Facts,
and normalize therapy.
And normalize. I have a teenager. She tells her friends, you should have a therapist.
Yes.
And then my son too. So it's not taboo. It's okay to be in therapy.
And you're not, if you go to therapy, that doesn't mean you're crazy.
It does not mean that means that you're trying to be that means you're trying to be healthier. That means you're trying to break these generational barriers that a lot of us have. That means that you're trying to be a functional human being with some good coping skills.
Yeah.
Functional human beings with good coping skills.
Yeah, healthy.
Is what we should all aspire to be.
Healthier. Healthiest that you
emotional intelligence, that's another buzzword.
Yes, emotional intelligence.
That I feel like a lot of people throw around and don't really know
what it means.
Don't have it.
Don't have it to
emotional regulation. That's another one,
because I feel like, especially one thing, because it helped me identify more than anything else, was that I needed to control my emotions. And it's just kind of like sometimes with just like talking through incidents and things that you've done, it's just like you recognize a pattern. It's just like, no, I'm just reacting off of how I feel in the moment. So but that comes with some like a level of emotional intelligence, recognizing what it is that you're doing.
And it comes from insight, right? You got to know what your triggers are. What makes you angry? So I'm already knowing this is gonna make me angry. So let me use my skills. Do I walk away? Do I kind of monitor my anger? Right. That's what you work out in therapy.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, once again, I want to say thank you.
For
coming. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, nothing else.
Do you want to say Essential Counseling Group one more time? Just for good measure?
EssentialCounselingGroup.com.
Yeah. I was counting for a second. I definitely lost count around 15.
I don't think we made it to 15, but we can.
Essential counseling. Just in case.
All right, man. Well, this has been cool. Once again, thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye.